Number 3. Resident Evil 5. There's something of a schism in the Resident Evil fandom where a large portion of lovers of the series feel that the most recent games are diverging too far from its roots in pioneering the survival horror genre. And for their part, I agree with them. Unfortunately, that's completely irrelevant when considering whether or not Resident Evil 5, the newest episode in Capcom's legendary series, is a great game. To clarify, I am a lover of the Resident Evil series, having played most of the games to completion when they were new. And while I concede that Resident Evil 5 is a much different style of game from the first group of games, up to Code Veronica, it is nonetheless an absolutely fantastic game. In co-op. In my opinion, RE5 is the example that all other cooperative buddy games should follow. In no aspect, from mechanics to presentation, difficulty curve, visual detail, control, cinematics, pacing, or replayability does Resident Evil 5 not excel. The facial animations and detail of the characters add a level of emotion and realism to the interplay between the two main characters, Chris and Sheva, that just isn't found elsewhere. Visually, the game is stunning and a pleasure to the eyes from start to finish. The stages are well laid out, challenging and of appropriate length, and virtually never feel cheap. Poor design choices are virtually non-existent. The mechanics thrive in cooperative play. Because of the nature of Resident Evil's playstyle, where players are forced to stop and take aim in order to fight, the dynamics of protecting one another, covering each other's back, coordinating when to fight and when to flee, and working together to overcome the tough obstacles becomes like second nature, and nurtures a level of immersion that I've not encountered elsewhere. Resources are limited enough to be precious, and players will spend a lot of time sharing and managing the needed ammunition and health items. A surprisingly deep system of weapon collection and upgrading adds both depth and replayability to the game, as do a few sets of collectibles to satisfy the careful explorer. The level of challenge will keep you on your toes throughout the entire game, and the boss fights are epic in true Resident Evil tradition. Now, it's true and fair to say that Resident Evil 5 is no longer a survival horror game. There's really nothing scary in the game anymore, and other than a few grotesque monster moments, nothing here will give experienced gamers pause, who have most likely seen much worse. There are not even many jump scares, which were at one point the bread and butter of the Resident Evil experience. The characters are tougher, more well-armed, and control far better than in the older games, so it's much more difficult to threaten the players. With this in mind, I believe Resident Evil 5 has stopped trying to be scary and simply dedicated itself to being an absolutely amazing, immersive game. Admittedly, playing the game solo while the AI takes over the second player will not be remotely as amazing an experience, to the point that I would hesitate to recommend the game to those without a good friend to play through it with. It'd be a shame to miss out on undertaking the game the way it was truly intended. On top of that, the less quick players may find the quick time events to be frustrating, and as is also a tradition in Resident Evil games, the plot is convoluted and cliched, but we all know that's not the point of these games. If you have a friend to play it with, I cannot recommend enough that you sit down and play through this outstanding game. I've been through it 4 times with the same friend and we're still finding new reasons to play. It's that good.
This is insane!
You ever get the feeling you're expendable?
Number 2. Prototype. Prototype is an original property by Radical Entertainment and represents a mixture of the open-world, free-roaming style reminiscent of the Grand Theft Auto series, or Saints Row, and the ultra-high-action technical brawler, which traces back to games like Devil May Cry and God of War. Prototype gives the player control of Alex Mercer and sets him loose in a Manhattan-flavored sandbox plunged into a zombie apocalypse. Structurally, Prototype follows the mission-based progression common in open-world games, with the plot told through a sequence of main missions while the world is littered with optional events. Your powers and abilities in the game are acquired by spending experience, which you gain primarily through combat. The range of combat techniques and powers available, along with the responsive and well-designed control scheme, makes fighting extremely fun and satisfying. The game's plot is presented both through the linear progression of missions and a set of mostly optional side targets which provide fragments of the game's backstory and setting that can be pieced together by the end. What makes Prototype stand out is that you are an absolute monster in this game. Usually, player characters are a fairly typical representation of the power scale in the game. You're a knight fighting other knights, or a soldier shooting at other soldiers. In Prototype, you are an insanely powerful terror from the very beginning. Alex Mercer is a wolf in a world full of lambs, and the game is not shy about this fact. Now, that's certainly not to say that there isn't challenge in this game. In fact, it can be very hard. But that challenge comes in the scope of being set upon by a full armored division and a pack of huge mutant horrors. One single soldier is so little a threat as to be literally insignificant, never mind the thousands of civilians and zombies that populate the world. Prototype has even a second trick up its sleeve, with the disguise system. Because Alex can take on the physical appearance of anyone he consumes in the game, there's an additional layer of stealth mechanics that allow you to play the whole game, or any part of it that you like, with more guile and subterfuge than brute force and destruction. This, plus the library of options at your disposal, such as stealing and driving military hardware and impersonating officers in order to call in airstrikes, makes for an incredibly open game. Any given mission, for the most part, can be accomplished in a number of different ways. If something doesn't work, just rethink your approach. This kind of gameplay rewards cleverness and allows players to play to their own strengths, which deserves high praise. Despite how much I love this game, and I do love this game, it isn't perfect. Much of the criticism toward Prototype is aimed at the visuals. Fair enough, it's certainly not the best looking game out there, but for me I find with the amount of action and the sheer volume of characters on screen at any one time, along with the incredible mayhem going on, that it looks quite good. The geometry tends to be simple, but I believe that was probably necessitated by the game's adaptive parkour system, as well as keeping the performance as smooth as possible. A few other small points of caution. Firstly, this is an alarmingly violent game. You will, on a regular basis, be ripping people in half, blowing them apart, and beating them to a smear. The game is unabashedly brutal and gory, so if that's a problem for you, stay away. Also, because of the scope of options made available to the player, Alex's capabilities, and the complexity and depth of the maneuvers and controls, there can be a bit of a learning curve here. It'll take you a while to get used to how the game handles, but once you do, you'll be well rewarded. It was a very hard choice for me to put Prototype in the number 2 spot. I am absolutely crazy about this game, and I never get tired of the openness, scale, and carnage it provides. In all honesty, I'll be coming back to this one more and spending more time with it than I will my number 1 pick. I do, however, feel that a lot of that is personal preference and how perfectly Prototype appeals to my taste in gaming. It's not a flawless game, but if you want to wreak some havoc, soar like a bird, blend into the shadows, and revel in a violent, bloody little playground, Prototype will make you giggle like a schoolgirl.
I was made for this.